Next week is the 85th anniversary of the publication of Action Comics #1, which was the first appearance of Superman. So I wanted to ask you, what does that character mean to you, like it means to so many people across the world, and what can you teach our creators out here in the audience today about creating characters that have a lasting legacy?
I encountered Superman upside down, which is to say the very first time I ran into the character of Superman, I would have been 5 or 6 years old, and my dad had a book of cartoons by Jules Feiffer called The Explainers, which was my favorite book. I didn't care that I didn't really understand what these comics, which had all originally been published in the Village Voice, were actually about. I just loved them. There was something about the way that he drew. There was something about the way that he paced his delivery that just made me happy. And one of those comics was about Superman. And it's just Superman, and he's standing there looking super, as drawn by Jules Feiffer, and he's got his, hands on his hips, and his cape is blowing behind, and he says, "I used to be Superman. Everywhere you look, I used to rescue people. Everywhere you look, I'd be rescuing people. Someone in a fire, I'd rescue them. And one day, I pulled this chick out of a river." And just for reference, I am 5 years old in England. As far as I'm concerned, he has pulled a baby chicken out of a river. It made as much sense as anything else. So he pulls a chick out of a river, and instead of saying, "Thank you, Superman," she wanted to know why I was wearing these tight clothes and whether my need to compulsively rescue people was based on an urgent and desperate need to please people. And then she asked me about my mother. And I got to, we went back and forth on this for a while, and eventually I got her to admit that although I might not be super, I was perhaps a little better than average. And then the last shot is him still going like this, but now he's wearing a suit and glasses and looks very Clark Kent. And he's saying, I've got a good job in a city. We have a dog. We're doing fine. And so as far as I was concerned, that was what Superman was. Everything else I've read after that has been a peculiar gloss on the idea of Superman as somebody who pulls baby chickens out of rivers, marries them, and has a desperate need to please people. Having said that, I loved Superman. I loved the Superman comics. For me, my golden era of Superman was Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson in the early 70s. But there was always a sort of a wary respect for Superman, going, okay, I like you, you're inspiring, you're cool. Really, I like my characters properly screwed up. If the choice was one Bernie Wrightson drawn issue of Swamp Thing against my entire Superman collection, I would have been sad, but Superman would have gone, and a muck-encrusted monster shambling out of the swamp would have stayed, because that was where my heart was.